So I'd like to start off with a brief introduction to improv. How many of you have ever attended an improv event? Okay, how many of you have ever dabbled in improv? Okay, I'm a self-proclaimed dabbler in life. And in high school, I would drive an hour each way every week on these steep mountain roads to this improv class. And I joined it on a whim, but I kept returning because of that magical feeling that I got every time a scene took on an energy of its own. In improv, the actor has to enter the scene without a preformed agenda of what they want to get from it. Like me, that's why that happened. And you have to set that aside. So if I come in here to the improv scene with this idea that I'm going to tell this great pun about hot dogs, then it inevitably becomes about me trying to mold the plot to fit my own objective. If I'm able just to be present in the moment and respond to everything that happens, then the scene takes on an organic energy of its own, and the possibilities are endless. This is why every young improv actor is taught the central tenet of yes and. Do you ever wonder how improv scenes get to such crazy places? It's because of this phenomenon. And because you're always taking what someone else has suggested and adding on to it. So I'd like to give an example of what I mean by this. We don't have time to actually act out any improv, but I can kind of stage it. So can I have a volunteer? Yes, young man. Great. Okay. Alright. So I'm actually going to give him a little prompt, so it's not improv, but... Okay. Great. Alright, so this is just to demonstrate the difference between if you say yes and add something on versus if you're skeptical and approach something with doubt. So scene. Charles, what are we going to do to get out of here?
Well, good thing I have my Mary Poppins umbrella.
How did that fit in your pocket?
It was there.
Alright, take two. Charles, what are we going to do to get out of here?
Well, luckily I have my Mary Poppins umbrella.
Don't leave me behind! The children are waiting on me! Alright, thank you. Alright, so I haven't done much improv, obviously, since high school. But I continue to see parallels in medicine. You have to be quick thinking on your feet. You have to take surprises in stride as they come your way. You have to take on one role and then quickly cast it aside to don another one. In medicine, you have to be able to deeply empathize with your patient in one moment and then step back and objectively analyze the situation in the next. And yet, ironically, it seems like in the last 2 years, I've been training myself to say, yes, but. I've become so good at picking out what's wrong in a given situation, whether it's just focusing on the disease in my patient, or pinpointing what's wrong with our medical education, or tearing apart our healthcare system. And I can think, like, when was the last time when you guys read an article or saw a new idea and you thought, oh, the endless possibilities? Or is it generally, maybe, what about that? What about this caveat? And I can think of the times that I've presented a new idea to a committee, or to a board of your peers, or to a board of directors, and how often do you get done with your presentation of this new idea and they say, yes, and? Or it's like, yes, but what about this conflict, or what about this lack of research? And what's missing there? And this became acutely aware for me, I think, like 3 weeks ago. I was on Facebook and I was scrolling through my news feed and I saw a picture that a friend had posted. It was like puppies and ice cream and sunshine, and it had the hashtag 100 happy days. And for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it's a social media trend that it challenges people to be happy for 100 days in a row. But I remember I was looking at the puppies and the sunshine, and I snorted and I was like, I sure hope I don't have to be around that person on day 101 when they're allowed to stop being happy. But what made that my knee-jerk reaction? Why wasn't I like, oh, what a neat short-term project to cultivate long-term habits of approaching each day joyfully? You see the contrast? Another example was back towards the beginning of the school year. My mom called me and was all excited about this gluten-free diet that she was feeling so good on, and my dad had lost a lot of weight on. And I think it's funny how quickly medical students learn to play the part of knowledgeability, even while they're still floundering in the information. And I remember with the voice of a medical student that was just dripping with the sanctity of the scientific method and the righteousness of randomized controlled trials in my back. I said, there's no evidence behind that, Mom. It's a waste of money. But that, I mean, if she was attributing that change in her life to the positive things that she was experiencing, then it was working for her. That was my chance to share in her joy. I want to infuse yes and back into my life. It's not just about semantics, it's about focusing on what's positive and bringing everything else up to that same level. It's about setting aside my own agenda and my own ego to interact with others in a much more powerful manner. I think a lot of miscommunication in hospitals and in the healthcare settings stems from the failure to recognize the validity of another person's suffering. I worry that when I'm a physician, and perhaps I already have, become more calloused and less interested in those routine cases that you see day in and day out. And for a patient that's facing a significant illness, that diagnosis is anxiety and fear-provoking, regardless of the best prognosis. And I want to stop and remind myself to say yes, to affirm the fear and the validity of what they're feeling in that moment. I think this holds true, and I've been collecting a list of to-dos for myself when I enter practice, and lest I lose myself in the process. And one of those to-dos is to have a clinical intake form that includes questions like, what excites my patient? What motivates her? What does he do for relaxation? I feel like those are necessary elements to balance my understanding of a patient. If I focus just on the disease and just on the lab values, then I'm sending the message to my patient that his illness is the only part of him that matters to me. And I think that if I know what's happy and what's positive and what's stable in their life, then that gives me a place to build off of as we seek a solution to their healing. And so when my patient's ready, I want to be there to say, yes, and.